All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So, as we all know, it's week 8, and the New York Jets are going to be at home taking on the Cincinnati Bengals on Halloween, actually. And I wanted to bring on my buddy Ace from New Stripe City. Ace, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey, Ian, appreciate you for having me, man. I'm having a great season so far, but definitely not overlooking this team.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you, man. Cincinnati, great. I mean, first place in the AFC North, 5 wins on the season. Are you, and by the way, all of Ace's links are linked down below in the description box, Instagram, Twitter, and then, of course, his YouTube channel. But how surprised are you at this 5-win start?
I think for me, like at first, I would say I wouldn't be as surprised if it were the games that I expected us to win, right? Like when I first looked at the schedule, there were some games that I felt like were wins and some that I felt like were losses. Like the Packers one, I pretty much assumed that would be a L. I didn't expect it to be a situation where honestly, we probably should have won that game if we make a field goal. That was one that I didn't see coming. I also would probably say the Bears one I didn't see coming as a loss. And then when you talk about the Ravens one, I had that one as kind of a loss. So there were some games that I felt like we could get to 4-5 realistically, but I didn't think that we would have a win over the Ravens in that one. That just kind of threw me off. But I think for the most part, the expectations of where I thought we would be at about here, but honestly, probably a few steps ahead. Because I kind of assumed that this would be our year where we would be fun. We would have a pretty decent winning record, like a 9 or 10 games. And then I expected next year to really be that one where we went in for like a playoff run or something like that. But obviously now it seems like that's possible now. And that is something I did not see coming.
Yeah, I mean, we're only halfway through the season and, 3-4 more wins and you could be looking at nine wins on the season. But man, they've been fun, a fun team to watch, especially from afar. And it's been kind of the success has been spearheaded by Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, but I feel like it goes deeper than that.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of guys, and there's a lot of guys on this team that are, I don't want to say underrated, but they're pulling a lot of weight, like Chidobe Awuzie, Hendrickson off the edge, Hilton, right. Jesse Bates, Tyler Boyd. I mean, the list goes on and on. Well, I guess you kind of answered it before. Like you're not too surprised with how this team has started, but how surprised are you that this team was, definitely below average last season, and with only a couple tweaks here and there, adding a couple guys, a couple veterans, how surprised are you that this team completely it almost just looks like everything is clicking on all cylinders, and this is one of, if not the team to beat in the AFC?
I think it really started just from my perspective covering this team last year. There were a lot of injuries. Like a lot of people didn't really take that into account with us last year. DJ Reader, probably our number one free agent that we signed that season, went down early. I think about week 2, right? So we didn't have him. Geno Atkins, one of our good players that we've had, wasn't healthy at all. Clearly kind of decimated our defensive line. So when you take those two guys out and then you also lose Trey Waynes before he even plays a snap, that's pretty much essentially your entire free agency minus Von Bell and some guys that we picked up last year. And then you look at some of the guys that were there that were kind of from the old system that just didn't really fit the new scheme, and Carlos Dunlap and some of those guys there. So the injuries, I think, definitely played a part because Joe Burrow didn't get to finish the season. And there were so many flashes where we've seen things from this team last year where a lot of the games that they lost, they were really in. If you really go back and look at it, they only lost those by probably a 5 or 6 point margin when you look at some of those games. And some of them I remember. So for me, the way that Bengals fans kind of see it is, hey, there were about 5 to 6 more games that we were in, and we had all these injuries. We had Joe Burrow go down. And if things were to change, if we made a better coaching play, or if we had this person to block on that play, we know that those would probably have been wins for us. And so when that started off that way, and they went in and they kind of retooled this defense and really attacked the areas that were decimated defensively last year, when you talk about the defensive tackles, when you talk about the cornerbacks, those were positions that were really decimated. And that's where they really attacked that I think, in free agency. And then they also went out and found guys that fit the scheme better when they went out and got a Trey Hendrickson, because 17 sacks was just not going to cut it. It just really wasn't. And so they went out and got him. They got Larry Ogunjobi to replace Geno. They went out and they traded and got BJ Hill. Josh Tupou comes back because last year was a COVID season, so he opted out, which led to thin margins at that position. And I think you essentially turn around and look at the offense, and then you go out and you get a Riley Reef after allowing my man to actually be there in Bobby Hart. After allowing Bobby Hart to be there, that was just something that needed to happen. So they moved on from him, replaced him with Riley Reef, and really took away some of the deficiencies that they had last year. Last year, they didn't have Joe Mixon. That was another player they just didn't have. So you get a healthy Joe Mixon back, you improve the line, you go out in the draft and you get Jackson Carman. And then the last thing is you had AJ Green walk out the door. Well, guess what? You had to replace 100 targets with AJ Green. So why not go out and get Jamar Chase? You've already approved the line. There was a debate, which I was on the side of the Panay thing, but when you really look at it, they didn't really need Panay if they planned on playing Jonah Williams at left tackle. I personally wanted Panay to play left tackle, but that wasn't what the Bengals were going to do. So they planned to play Jonah at left tackle, and they planned to play Riley Reef at right tackle. And so they really essentially only needed a guard. So you could take Jamar Chase and then also improve that right guard position in the second round. And that's what they did. They also got faster at linebacker. That was one of their issues, especially playing in the division with Lamar Jackson. So just a culmination of all of these moves coming together, plus guys staying healthy. The key thing is staying healthy. Guys fitting in this system now, especially on defense with Lou Anarumo. I think that is what has led to the ascension of this team with the record and the talent that they have amassed.
Right. So they were pretty much right on the cusp. All they needed was, that extra boost of talent. I thought the Reeve signing from Minnesota was one of the most underrated offensive line signings of the NFL offseason when you're looking at all 32 teams. And it's paying off. It's for sure paying off. But we know what this Bengals team is good at. They're throwing the ball all over the yard. Jamar Chase, everybody knows the headlines. What is this team bad at? What are the weaknesses that the Jets could possibly expose? And I know that sounds crazy, one win on the year and we've been an absolute train wreck, but I mean, Cincinnati at the end of the day, they're a good team, but they're not a perfect team. What's the weakness?
Right. I would probably say the weakness is consistency in terms of that offense. So the offense in the past 2 weeks has taken off, and this is what I would have hoped would have happened following the 3 performances in front of that, because the Bengals offense was kind of streaky. They were a second half offense where they would put up points in bunches in the second half, and then we'd score like right before half after a bunch of punts and stall outs on drives. So I would say that would be one of our weaknesses, is sometimes we are not as consistent in terms of our offense, although in the last 2 games, they're starting to try to get it going. And that's something that we're going to hope improves in this game. But if the Jets can take advantage of those opportunities where we don't score, or where they are having 3 and outs and they go out and they're able to put a touchdown or some points on the board, that could be a position in which Chicago kind of got us in that could lead to some surprises. I think if you're talking about specifically positions, I would say before last week, it would probably be the interior of the offensive line. And I don't mean the left side, because our guard over there has been doing his thing in terms of that position. Right guard is where I'm talking about. So I know sometimes other fans of other teams may not be familiar with the players per se, but Quentin Spain is our left guard. He's playing at an elite level. And our right guard is going to be Jackson Carman, who's a rookie who had a slow start to the season, but really kind of rebounded in the last 2 games at that position. He did have some issues where he was kind of in and out of the lineup with some illness, but he really put it together in that last game. But if there's anywhere that you can take advantage of the offensive line, if I had to point to the weak point, I would probably say teams would probably scout it as the interior. And that also involves Trey Hopkins, who also was struggling early on, but also bounced back last game. So I think if there's anywhere that you can attack us as far as a weakness, the interior of that line, and you can kind of use that to stop the run game, right? And it's almost kind of a domino effect, because this Bengals offense loves to get the run established and play balance so that people just can't tee off on Joe Burrow. But if you do kind of what the Baltimore Ravens did to us earlier last week, if you stop the run, it can somewhat make us one-dimensional. So I would say, as far as the offensive interior, if you can kind of penetrate that, it leads to making us run and then becoming one-dimensional. And then I would probably say, as far as weaknesses on the defense, there really aren't many. To be honest with you, I would only say one player that you could probably take advantage of in coverage, maybe Eli Apple. Teams haven't targeted him recently, so he's actually been pretty solid in recent games. So it's kind of hard to judge him, because early in the season, he was kind of the go-to target for other teams, and now they've kind of tried to switch to Cheeto. And so I would say probably that part of the defense you may be able to take advantage of, and those would probably be some of the weaknesses that I would say as far as this team.
Got you. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Cincinnati's I really feel like the Bengals can make a playoff push this year. I don't know. Like, I'm thinking maybe one game in the playoffs. I could be overestimating the success of the team, but I really like the direction. I got to be honest. I like the head coach, Zach Taylor. There's a lot of criticism early, and just because of the win-loss record and whatnot. But yeah. Ace, I appreciate you hopping on, man. Really do. And looking forward to hopping on your channel as well.
Likewise, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, go Jets.